This chapter is on managing stress to work for you. Everyone has stress, and it's a matter of determining how we perceive that stress and also how we manage that stress. How can we uh, make decisions and choices that are going to be helpful? So there are a number of ways or stressors that can cause challenges in your day-to-day. So these are just some examples of what average college student might have. And so we have family that we love, family that we have a struggle with. We might have relationships that are good some days, and sometimes you just are frustrated with that particular individual. So stress can be something that is either causing something that's a positive emotion, or it can be a negative type of emotion. So examples, what kind of stressors are you dealing with right now? So as I mentioned, the eustress is a healthy stress. You feel fulfilled. It would be as if you had a test that you received a good score on. You just were asked out on a special event that was a person you haven't been able to see for a while. You feel good. You feel good. It kind of disrupts what your normal day was or what your routine is, but it gives you that good, healthy, positive emotion or feeling. Distress is something that causes a negative impact, and that's what we typically associate with the word stress. We determine whether something is a distress or a eustress based upon our attitudes and our emotions, and that's why it's really critical to not discount somebody's perception, because what they perceive is real. It is theirs, it is individual. So how you see a challenge does not necessarily mean how someone else will see a challenge. So we think about homeostasis as that baseline value that everyone is in. Allostasis is similar to it, but it's being able to have that variable challenges, the variability that allows you to bounce back and forth and be able to return to homeostasis. It's not necessarily the same as homeostasis. It's stability, your ability to move back and forth, back to the baseline. When you have a destructive impact on your health, that's called the allostatic load. And in more recent stress readings, you'll see the term allostatic load, and that is when you have a lot of negative impact on your health. The stress response involves the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And this picture shows sympathetic in the red, and when you think of red, you think of alarm. And so there is a nervous supply to your organs, your internal organs, that are about generating energy, getting ready, arousal, excitability. You have to respond to something quickly. You'll notice that the blue side, which is the parasympathetic side, also has the same list of organs. And when you have a parasympathetic tone, it's referred to, those organs are more relaxed. It's more calm. It's more well, relaxed. I'm going to use that word again. So when you have the rapid response to a stressor, it's called fight or flight. You have somebody scares you, or a dog is chasing you, or somebody almost hit you and you're driving your bike or walking along the road and someone nearly misses you. That is the sympathetic nervous system that activates, and you know that that's to be able to respond quickly. When you're relaxing before bed, we hope that your parasympathetic nervous system is more activated. That gives you that ability to fall asleep and rest. So the person that, when you get under a distress, such as something that you perceive as a negative poke, people respond very differently. You might have emotional responses, you might have anger responses, you might be the kind of person that wants to just go to bed, I want to go to sleep, I want to lay down, I want to retract, I become more withdrawn. Or maybe you get angry and fired up or tense. Your mind might just start getting really, really busy. Or perhaps you can't think very clearly. We all have our own way of responding to distress. I have kind of respiratory response. I get kind of tight chested and my breathing gets almost my asthma tends to activate. Some people get more GI problems like stomach upset. So when you have that stress, the general adaptation or GAS is general adaptation syndrome is the way that we can kind of regulate how we respond, these three general responses to stress. You have that fight or flight, and you can have it because of, as I mentioned, something kind of threatening or a threatening thought. That usually is short-lived and you return. If you have this stressor over and over and over, you will begin to have an immune response and you will have a possibility of moving from resistance phase to exhaustion. And exhaustion phase is where someone is often hyper responsive and they might have more negative physical outcomes than they did if it was just a short-term stressor. So I'm sure you've studied those before, but alarm resistance and exhaustion. The interesting part that people are starting to recognize is that your immune system does have a response to how our emotions, our hormones, how our nervous system reacts, and it's psycho, which is the mind, neuro is the nervous system, immunology is the immune system. They are really interconnected between the parts. And when you have the ability to use your mind and monitor or learn to relax and learn to take that stressor and not let it grab a hold and make you get to the point of a panic, you can have a much more calm response. So this is partially how we have individuals that will see not getting to class on time as not a big stress, and other people might see that it's a really huge stress and it's very distressing. So we think about stress as causing a non-specific immune response, and it's a non-specific immune response because we have specific responses when we have a virus, such as a flu virus. When that gets inside of your body, your immune system responds to it as that's not normal and starts to wage its war to eliminate that virus. So stress causes a non-specific immune response, not necessarily that antibody response, but more of a high activation that is not specific to an organism, a bacteria, a parasite, but it's just on high alert. And whenever we have a lot of negative moods or negative thoughts that can lead down the road to feeling worthlessness with depression and not having the ability to get up and go to class or to enjoy the things that you once enjoyed, that can actually have the same kind of response as stress. So you get the same behavioral changes. And so that non-specific immune response is an emotion, a behavior, a body influence and also a mind. So what do you do when you have that stressor or you're feeling really down? Well, we tend to be irritable, maybe restless, maybe behavior could be I smoke more or I choose to drink more alcohol. Maybe your body hurts and you get rashes or itching, hives is something that occurs. As I mentioned, the breathlessness, that's my asthma that kind of pops up. Some people get tension headaches. You might not find yourself making good decisions, or you might be very negative and see everything as a problem. So the issues with how that non-specific immune response is activated, I'm sure that we all have experienced some of that at one point or another. And there are lots of reasons why we can have that source of distress. We can look at uh, these disruptions as an opportunity, a challenge, or you can get beat down by it if you have a lot of them and you don't have a real effective way of managing it. So when you think about how stressed you become during the week, think about not just when you feel distress, but also when you feel eustress. And eustress is that disruption that gives you that sense of accomplishment, that sense of well-being. So if somebody goes to that period of having a lot of stress and not managing it well, that's when we have links to some chronic diseases, and that could be the individual who's got a lot of stress in their job and they have heart disease, and some of this goes along with some of the behaviors that go along with coping, right? So maybe not being active, maybe eating a poor diet, perhaps gaining weight. The stress-induced disorders are somewhat linked to behaviors, but it's also linked to that non-specific immune response. So to manage it, to make stress work for you, one is to become more empowered and productive. And when you have the will to find meaning, seeking that balance, putting yourself in a position of having more positive in your life and being around more positive people, having good stressors, that can help us to find that better level of balance. So make stress work for you by challenges that are going to give you purpose and also to challenge you to be resilient. So you can make stress work for you by how your mind views it. We all know people that'll say, oh, that always happens to me. Nothing ever good happens to me. When we think about coming from the perspective of not feeling that it always happens to you, that just sometimes that's just it was not a predestination or it wasn't predetermined that you were going to have a tough time. It might be that you have a lot of stress in your life and that we need to stop and take a look and say, what is going to give me some joy? If I get some joy, that's going to help you to feel more in control, more focus on what kind of meaning that you have. Listen to your body, and when you feel that stress, take a deep breath. Go ahead and lift your shoulders up and back. Take a little time to kind of identify where am I holding that stress in my back, in my body. Can I take some breaths and kind of eliminate it? Can I be active? Because being physically active or exercising does help with depression, mild depression. We're not talking about severe depression. We're talking about mild depression or mood disorders when someone's just feeling kind of blue. Taking a walk is very beneficial. There are other relaxation ideas that you really have to identify what works for you. And there are some examples that are going to go along with this, with some of the assignments. So as you're looking at this chapter about stress, think about what are the good things in my life? What are the things that are giving me challenges? And how can I add components into my life that are going to give me some joy? And how can I keep people around me that are going to be supportive and not somewhat bring the negative out of me? So it's identifying how you can work from that internal locus of control, taking challenges and looking at them in a way that how can I learn from this and how can I do better?